I suppose the theme of the Keys of Marinus was beg, borrow and steal. Well, everything depended really on two factors, time and money, and there wasn't much of either. I think if we'd had a script conference, I could have had my feelings about this particular story, Keys of Marinus. I mean, it was really impossible, really. Every episode had a particular problem. But when I just had to forge ahead, it was my first really big show. And I didn't want to funk it. I think really everyone was proving themselves. Even Verity Lambert, I mean, science fiction hadn't been attacked before. So we were all trying to prove things. Each episode was done on one day in the studio. And not only the studio, one of the smallest drama studios at the time, Studio D, Lime Grove. I mean, the cyclorama that went round was only 12 foot high. And the sets were put up overnight. So I used to get into the studio about 4 o'clock in the morning because I knew by that time the stagehands would be tired. They were always pleased to see me, you know, oh, here he comes. And I used to keep them at it. Everything had to be ready by 10 o'clock to start camera rehearsals. And of course, nothing was ready by 10 o'clock. And camera rehearsals went on till 6, break, 7 o'clock, back into the studio and record for 3 hours and finish sharply at 10. What inspired me? Difficult to say, really. You know, you just grab at the first thing that comes to your mind, really. There wasn't time. The Great Machine of Marinus was one of these problematic sets. I had a design budget and a special effects budget. And there came a point on one particular episode where I didn't have any design budget left, but I had some visual effects budget. So I concocted a set out of visual effects money. I got Shorecraft models to build the conscience machine where the Keys of Marinus went in, and the structure of poles went round it, painted silver and surrounded by black drapes, which were free. When I'm reading a script, I make notes. And there was a scene with a struggle in one of the corridors with the Fords. And this Ford fell through a secret panel and there was a terrible death scream. So I said to the director, you know, what's happened? He said, well, he's fallen into the sea of acid. So I said, well, are we going to see that? Well, I said, well, the viewer can only judge by what he's seen on the screen. And if he doesn't see that he's fallen into the sea of acid, as far as they're concerned, this Ford has just fallen into a dark cupboard. So he said, well, do it. Yes, the brains. That was another set that was not a set, actually. The brains and the apparatus that went with them were made by Shorecraft models. All I supplied, really, in set terms, was the rostra for the brains and the door that entered into this dark room. But it was really black drapes, which again were free. There was hardly any sort of design budget involved. The laboratory where they're still under the influence, and they walk in to this wonderful laboratory and they see, well, it's a bare room with a rusty mug. That was very cheap to do. As a point of interest, a lot of writers are fairly clueless about sets. I did say to Terry Nation once, I said, you often write in your stage directions, they walk into a bare white room. What do you actually mean by that? He said, well, I couldn't think of anything else to put. You know, do what you like. The transformation, see, where you see the same set but under two different conditions was quite expensive to do. I was called over the coals. The assistant head of the design department had walked through the workshops and seen my sets being constructed and thought they were extravagant. He was one of the people that came down from Ali Pali. Up at Ali Pali, they used to make, do and mend. It was all a bit sort of amateur. And I think, you know, there were a lot of us now working at the television centre who tried to go beyond that that stage. One of the most difficult episodes was the episode where there was lots of trick effects, nets falling, creepers strangling people, falling ceiling, a bed of spikes. I don't know how we got through that day. I ended up feeling totally embarrassed by the whole thing. I thought it was awful, awful. But others seemed to be satisfied. At least we got through it. The initial effect when they approached this religious Buddha-like figure and to carve, get a sculptor to carve the figure would be fairly straightforward. But to get the mechanical arms and so on was going to be too expensive. So I suggested having real arms. The cheaper the version, the real arms never fail. So we had these arms, and it didn't quite work, but it was cheap.
Oh, look! Well, there's a rope bridge. Be careful. Is it safe? I think so.
The bridge did collapse in the first go. It was a very short little bridge.
Stop him!
There's no warrior set. We had problems with that. I was running out of set money, and I'd borrowed some scenery from another show, which wasn't very good, wasn't very rock-like. In fact, it's one of the very few times that I was called out by Verity Lambert. She said, "It looks awful. What are you going to do about it?" So I suggested quickly make the shots tighter and make the set darker. You know. Let's try and lose a lot of the background, which is what we did. So it was a very dark picture. And the ice caves, I remember how I did that now. I think I used that cellophane wrapping stuff and just crunched that all up over the walls to make it glisten and look like ice. We must remember that we were using black and white and 405 lines, which covered up a multitude of sins. You know, when we went to 625 lines, it sharpened everything up. So, you know, you couldn't get away with so many things like that. But it's the most unloved story, as far as I'm concerned, really. Simply because they were asking too much of me, I think, in terms of time and, as I say, time and money.
And looking back on it, is there anything you're really proud of and you think works very well?
Am I proud of anything in the keys of Marinus? I can really say no.